I'm gonna presume that most of you guys watching this know what Bluetooth is, or at least what it sorta does. To most people, it's something you enable on your phone, tablet, or laptop to then pair with a device like wireless earbuds or headphones. Sometimes it works great, sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes strangers can hear every single word you say, and maybe even whisper near your phone, depending on how good the microphone is. As my good buddy Mr. Kyle would say with rich sarcasm, Jamazing. Welcome to Level 1 Melon, where we cover tech security. Today's video piggybacks off of the recent update put out by Apple for their Beats Studio Earbuds, specifically firmware update version 1B211. This is a patch for a vulnerability in those earbuds that allowed for attackers within Bluetooth range to be able to listen to your conversations through the microphone of that device when it is in pairing or seeking mode. That microphone flaw is rooted in a Bluetooth vulnerability that is tracked as CVE 2025-20701, and it doesn't just affect those Beats Studio earbuds. As I understand it, theoretically all devices that rely on the Airoha SDK for Bluetooth audio are susceptible to this vulnerability, and as far as I could look up, this SDK is a proprietary piece of software for Airoha Bluetooth chips, like the AB1595. Even though Apple states that the vulnerability is from open source code that Apple software is based on, maybe they mean some part of their end of the chain and not specifically the SDK. So, what is Airoha, if that's the right way to say the name? Airoha is a subsidiary of MediaTek, which is a company that designs chips that do specific functions for things like smartphones and Internet of Things devices. From what I could gather on their website, Airoha seems to be specializing in wireless technology like 5G. They have a line of products for enabling Bluetooth functionality in consumer devices, like the aforementioned AB1595, which turns out was their flagship wireless AI audio chip back in 2024 with built-in AI hardware acceleration for, I don't know, AI audio via Bluetooth. Typically with third-party hardware modules, which I guess is what you could kinda call this Bluetooth chip, you'll often receive an SDK from the vendor to help with integration. SDK stands for Software Development Kit and is basically a collection of tools, code, and documentation to help with integrating said modules into your device. I guess it's kind of like if you bought a wall mount shelf from IKEA, the SDK would be the manual, the tools, the screws, and the brackets for helping you integrate the wall mount shelf into your living space. It's a bit more complicated than that with the software side of things, but that's a basic, crude analogy that can kinda work, I guess. Anyway, the core vulnerability stems from a weakness in the Bluetooth audio SDK for those Airoha chips. What weakness, you ask? Well, let me try another analogy in order to give you a better picture here. Imagine a doorman or a bouncer who's been instructed to open the front door to welcome an invited guest who's on their way. They know they're expecting a guest, but they don't know who that guest is. So in order to signal that the entrance is open for that guest, they yell out loud in public that the door is open. Some rando then walks by and asks about the door that is wide open. Hey, what's in there? And the bouncer goes, oh, this door? It leads to a vault where we're hoarding all the RAM and SSDs, but I'm waiting for someone that I'm supposed to let in here, not just anyone. And then the rando goes, oh, well, yeah, I'm totally that guy. You should just let me in. Don't worry about it. To which the bouncer then responds, okay, and lets the rando in without having done any sort of verification or authentication. That's how silly this Bluetooth vulnerability is. It was first discovered sometime last year and disclosed right around August, if I'm not mistaken, by researchers Dennis Hines and Frieder Steinmetz of ERNW, which is an IT security services company. They talked about the Bluetooth vulnerability in a security conference in Germany where they demoed the missing authentication weakness and how it could be exploited to initiate calls and eavesdrop on conversations within range of the targeted device that had Bluetooth on. The researchers were able to retrieve personal data like call history and contacts. It was also possible to chain this vulnerability with other vulnerabilities that were reported for the same set of Airoha chips right around the same time, to then exploit Bluetooth features like hands-free profile to issue commands to the phone that was targeted after hijacking it. No authentication or pairing was required. You just had to be within Bluetooth range, which is like 10 meters, I think, after a quick search that I did for most phones and earbuds. So like a coffee shop setting, you sit down to order a drink, check your phone, either you have Bluetooth already on or you try to initiate pairing with your headphones, and then bam, phone gone. Some chud 2 tables across just hijacked it. And it doesn't even have to be a scenario where you're in the middle of having to pair a Bluetooth device. This vulnerability can be triggered via features like Bluetooth Low Energy, which reminds me of something that the local government here sort of mandated or pushed very heavily a few years back. You know, right around the time when people were getting infected with the human malware. Hopefully you know what I'm talking about. There was this nationwide app by the government that was spun up to record and track people's medical status. So it had a medical record on board and synced up to some server controlled by who knows what. And it had this functionality of pinging other nearby devices via Bluetooth Low Energy in order to alert someone if they were close to a person who may have been exhibiting particularly risky symptoms. It's been a few years since anyone in government last mentioned the app, so it's probably super duper abandoned, and we've had a change of government like 3 times since the app was first introduced, so the contractors are all probably long gone. If that sounds like a dystopia, well, this part of the world is so oblivious to that crap. It was either that or you couldn't go outside back then, or maybe even worse. That all aside, thankfully the mitigation step for this Bluetooth vulnerability isn't something complicated. In fact, most people probably won't realize they've had a high severity vulnerability on their Beats Studio Earbuds patched, because according to Apple's statement, the device should automatically update its firmware the next time it connects to a parent device, I guess, like an iPhone or an iPad, that has a connection to the internet. While that is kinda great, in some ways it is also not great that a corporation could force apply a firmware update that changes how your device behaves at a fundamental level. Yeah. Kinda reminds me of something that was posted like a couple of weeks ago. Microslop is back at it again, forcing slop into the OS. And judging by the comments of the last video, heartfelt thanks from me to every one of you guys, by the way. Going through those comments, it really seemed like a lot of you guys were great fans of Microsoft, so they're kind of responding in kind, I guess. So yeah, if you own a device like the Beats Studio Buds or anything that uses the Airoha set of chips, get it patched, and maybe be a bit more mindful when using Bluetooth or other wireless technologies when trying to pair devices. You could also try turning Bluetooth off if you don't need it, if that is possible. I know that these days, with the way manufacturers are going and how the OS is getting more and more locked down, that may not be as easy as it sounds. I get it. We're just gonna have to do what we can and work with what we got, I guess. Well, I hope you found this video somewhat useful, if not interesting. If you'd like to support the work being done here, you could just simply leave a comment detailing your thoughts. I'd love to read them, or just say hi. Otherwise, I do hope I'll get to see you in the next video. Cheers!